Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joseph Ryder Anderson podcast. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Code Geass Volume 2 and Attack on Titan sets. Both of these sets look like they're going to be absolutely incredible from a gameplay standpoint. Rare battles should be insanely fun. The rare battles are coming up in just a few weeks for the fall season. These sets are just going to have an outstandingly huge impact on the meta overall. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the latest decks that are going to come out when the two new sets come out in just a few weeks. We're going to take a look at those decks, but then we're also going to be taking a look at how they stack up competitively on the tier list. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay. All right, starting out, we have Attack on Titan. I think Attack on Titan is going to be a super big set. Not only is it going to be popular for players, but it's going to be, and of course the IP, but it's just going to be really fun. There's a lot of new kinds of decks we haven't seen before, doing new things with new mechanics. So I think this should be a phenomenal set for the English meta. Starting out, we're going to start with from bottom up, but the Zeke Beast Titan deck is probably the weakest deck coming out in this set. It's really not doing anything too incredible, looking to swarm the board with these pure Titans and then powering them up to attack. It does have this one really strong card, which is the Rod Reese Titan, and this character does become a 6,000 BP character during your turn, and if there's an active character in your opponent's front line, it gains damage too. So a 4-cost character, damage 2 with 6,000 BP is not a bad card, right? But there's not really a lot of other things going for this deck. You don't have very many Rod Reese raid targets. You just have the one 0-cost copy, four copies of the 0-cost. So this deck really isn't, that card's not really going to have the gas to carry you alone. And then you do have the Beast Titan card, which becomes a lot easier to play based on how many pure Titans you have and can grant additional benefits to the other Titans on your deck. But ultimately, it's just not a strategy that's going to fare super well competitively. Moving on to a deck, it's a decent step up in power. And this is the one that is going to be probably relatively popular because you can build this from the starter decks. This is sort of like the upgraded starter deck, Attack on Titan deck. This is the focused on the trio of friends of Armin, Eren, and Mikasa. And interestingly enough, and again, this kind of ties back in with what I was saying about there being a lot of interesting new mechanics in this set. This deck really focuses on bouncing your own cards to the hand. And you can unlock additional benefits this way, and you can also get more cards onto the field by using these different effects. And you're really looking to just overwhelm your opponent. Like most aggro decks, especially red aggro decks, you're looking to overwhelm your opponent, some multi-attack capabilities, and to just get in there before they can do much to stop you. The green Marleyan Warrior deck, this is where the decks take a bit of a leap in power. I actually really like the Marleyan Warrior deck. There's some really interesting things going on here. The most interesting cards in this deck are the Colossal Titan cards to me. The 10 cost is just kind of insane, 6,000 BP. Of course, he is a 10 cost character, but you do have cards that reduce that energy cost, like the Anti-Titan character, and you also have cards that can gain a lot of energy on the front line and things of that nature. So that makes this a little easier to get off. The Colossal Titan itself has damage 3, impact 1. It does remove one spot on your front line, so it does create some holes that way. But when played, he will just like sideline all opposing 0-cost characters. So kind of gets rid of the aggro threat, and most likely if you're playing against someone, they're going to switch to aggro to try to take you out before you can play these stronger characters. And I do really like this 6-cost Colossal Titan. I wouldn't overlook this card. When played, you can sideline a sight on your opponent's field, and then of course you also have it also has 5,000 base BP, which is going to be a pretty insane blocker for you with no other drawbacks. So two really strong cards there. The blue Astoria deck is the Attack on Titan take on an event-focused deck. So both of these sets that we're going to be looking at in this video and this podcast have decks that focus on events. This one is probably one of the strongest we've seen to date. And the thing I really like about this deck is that you can restand your action points quite often. And this, I don't think we've seen a deck that has the kind of AP extension that this deck has. You can kind of think of like Hellish Blizzard, but just a lot stronger in terms of extending the AP that you can play in a turn. And then you can also buff up this Historia to be a lot stronger. The red Attack on Titan deck, meanwhile, is really strong. And here we get into kind of S tier territory. I could definitely see this deck making it into the S tier. You have these two phenomenally powerful Attack Titan cards, the Eren Yeager Attack Titan at 8 cost and 6 cost. And they're both doing similar things. They both have damage too. I think the 8 cost is significantly more powerful, largely because you can take advantage of this effect. If you have 3 life or less, you can switch it to active when attacking. So it becomes a double attacker with damage 2, and of course you can use the activate main to sideline chump blockers on your opponent's field. As we've seen from the Roy Mustang's success at the regional that happened, getting rid of chump blockers can be a great way to force your opponent into removals that they don't want. And with damage 2 coming in twice, they're really going to have to block this guy. So you could clear an entire board with just this character alone. Meanwhile, the 6 cost character is also really strong and doesn't have that restanding attack effect, but it can sideline. It can let you draw a card. It gives you multiple options, and whenever you have multiple options in the same card, that's a great thing to have. And then, of course, coming in damage 2 with 5,000 BP is not a small issue. Very, very strong deck. I think it's really exciting to see some of these mechanics. I really like this basement card with 3. It's a sight card with 3 energy, helping you reach those higher energy thresholds a little more easily. I think this is going to be a really fun deck to try and should do very well in the meta. And at number 1, my pick for number 1 is a deck that we just have not seen anything like this. The blue Levi deck. If you've been following the meta, the current sort of king of the multi-attack strategy, and again, more and more decks are incorporating some multi-attack, but decks that primarily focus on multi-attack above everything else. Really, the heavyweight champion currently is probably Blue SAO. That deck has done very, very well at many different kinds of tournaments, and it's all because of its powerful multi-attack capabilities. However, I don't see it being able to contend with the likes of a Blue Levi deck. This deck just has so much multi-attack baked into it, and does so in a way that's just so consistent. So this Levi is your main character here, and he is going to come in and he is capable of taking 3 attacks in a turn. The third attack, essentially, you're going to use the double attack for the first 2, and then you're going to use the once per turn effect to pay 1 AP to let him switch to active again so that you can attack. And then on the third attack, he gains snipe. That might sound like a lot to come together, but you have so many cards like the 3 cost Irwin and the 3 cost Petra that lets you very easily restand APs at the beginning of your attack phase. So getting this 3 attack combo off shouldn't be a huge deal. I think that we're probably going to see the same kind of like, what do you want to call it, starstruckness that we saw over Roy when this deck comes out. This deck should probably be very heavily prominent at the next regional that's coming up in September. So those are the new decks that are coming out in Attack on Titan. But Union Arena Code Geass Volume 2 also has a lot of really exciting things, and these decks are so strong being a Volume 2 set that it's actually kind of hard to rank them because they're all really good. But here you see at the bottom of the list, I do have the Blue Chinese Federation deck, and it's not because this deck isn't good. There are a lot of really interesting things you can do with this deck. I think that if you've noticed from looking at the decks that tend to top things, it's because they do one thing better than everything else. Whereas this deck doesn't really do that. This deck is sort of a jack of all trades, capable of resting cards, capable of having some strong plays, especially this play around paying costs. Let's see if we can get in here and look at this one. You have these cards that, like, if on the front line at the end of your attack phase, sideline this character, replace a card from your hand to your sideline. That's kind of supposed to be a drawback, but because you have this Tianzi character, you can use her to bring those cards back that you sideline from your hand. So that's really strong. This card is super strong. Again, this is like an example of one of those decks that has double attack baked into it, even though it's not primarily a multi-attack deck. So this card you can use, you can play it for only 1 AP and grant a Chinese Federation Affinity card on your front line, double attack and 1,000 BP. That's really strong. And you do have some significant draw via the 4 cost Li Jingke. Draw 2 cards and place 2 cards from your hand to the sideline, and then he also becomes a 4,000 BP if you have Tianzi on your field. This is a really strong, the Vincent Rollo Fighter, we'll talk about this more in a bit, is a really strong card, letting you rest opposing characters and also just forcing them to stay frozen. Very handy card to have in your deck. And then, of course, the Shenhu choose up to one character with 3,500 or less BP on your opponent's front line, and return it to their hand. Choose up to one Tianzi on your energy line and switch it to active. Decent bounce effect. So you do have a lot going on here. But again, it's more of a jack of all trades deck than it is a focus on a single strategy. And I think that's going to make it a little harder for this deck to fare well in the regular store tournament format. That being said, I think this could be a really interesting option for the rare battle format with a lot of interesting plays into that format. So going back to here with the deck lists, I think the Four Holy Swords was actually a really strong deck in set one, had a lot of potential. You can combo these different raid characters to unlock a lot of effects. You can really just do a lot of punishing attacks. I think my favorite combo is with this Gekka Four Holy Swords fighter that gains impact, and you can restand it with the Toto fighter. And then we do get this solid new raid in the form of Zangetsu. So impact 1, choose up to one Four Holy Swords Affinity card in your field. It gains 2,000 BP until the end of the turn. So you can essentially buff any of your Four Holy Swords characters to become a lot stronger, and having a baked-in impact 1 is definitely nice to have. So this deck became a lot stronger, a lot more consistent. Doesn't have the same, had a ton of triggerless effects before, or cards before, whereas now it has just a more standard run of triggerless versus trigger. So I think this deck can definitely pop off. It won't probably be among the most popular or strongest, but for those who really like these characters, this should definitely be a viable strategy. Moving on, we do have the Ashford deck. So Ashford did phenomenally well if you think about it, at the Gen Con, the first regional that we had. The Ashford deck, there was an Ashford deck in the top 16. So I think it's really, you can't really count this deck out. It's a deck that can move really quickly, still one of the fastest decks in the game, and it gets a little faster with this Gino Weinberg. You can choose up to one character with 3,000 or less BP on your front line, switch it to active. This really ties in with the other effects that switch to active, like the Ashford Academy site or the Suzaku Kurugi. You just get a lot of restands and attacks, multiple attacks in a turn, and it moves quickly. Doesn't have anything over 4, and then have 4 energy, and then having this Gino at 4,000 BP is definitely nice to have. I don't know that this deck is going to be as popular moving forward. It really doesn't get a ton of support in Volume 2. So I would think, I kind of tend to side with the Pizza deck that we're going to talk about here as being the deck that's going to probably get more notice. This deck was really fun when the first set came out, and I definitely had a lot of fun playing this deck and won some tournaments with it. So it was strong, but it just relied so heavily on this C2 character to win. But I think in Volume 2, we're going to get some cards like this Raid C2 with one of the strongest, if not the strongest, draw effects in the entire game. And cards like this are just going to make this deck a lot more consistent. It's going to make it a lot easier to get this C2 powered up. And you also have this Shirley Fennett card, which I think is really underrated right now. You can use her to bring back any event card from your sidelines. You can use this to bring back your finals. You can use this to bring back your specials, get added removal or added AP extension based on what you need. And then we do get a couple more cards to help out the strategy other than just the C2. We do also get the 2-cost C2, which grants added energy gen to this deck to make it a little easier to get some of your combos off, and also to reach this phenomenal 5-cost Lelouch, which very easily can sideline 4K. So I think this deck just has a lot going for it. You have this powerful closer in the form of the 2-cost C2. You have this powerful removal tool in the form of Lelouch. You have the Shirley to bring back event cards whenever needed, and it's just a really phenomenally strong deck. So I would look out for this one. And then now getting to the really, really top decks here, we do have I think we missed one. Sorry, the Black Knights. This is also a top deck. It's not going to be as top tier as the ones we're going to talk about in a second, but this one definitely is A tier in my books. And this is the new Black Knights deck, focused on the new energy color, the blue energy color, which is new to the Code Geass set. And we have a much stronger take on the Rolo Vincent fighter. We have some really strong cards in the form of like this 1-cost C2. If you've been doing the store tournaments lately, you might have won this one. I think I have like 4 or 5 copies. I think I probably have like 5 copies of this already. Maybe 6. I think I have 6 copies of this. Anyways, I've won a lot of tournaments. So this I've been kind of bagging the C2s in order to build in my own blue Code Geass deck, so I'm excited about that. But this is one of the strongest Nullify Impact characters in the game right now. She gets Sideline. Not only does she have Nullify Impact, she grants Nullify Impact to another character on the field. So this can be a really strong late game defense system. You also have this phenomenal C2. When played, you may place 2 cards from your hand into your sideline. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add up to 2 cards among them to your hand. So you're basically this is a really strong card search / draw effect. So I definitely would include her at only 1 cost. That's pretty incredible. 1 action point cost and 3 energy cost. That's a really solid card. And then you have a host of really strong raids. The Vincent's going to feel a lot stronger in this deck because this deck is really focusing on forcing your opponent's characters into resting, and that's going to create holes in their defense, but it's also going to cause you to unlock a lot of added benefits. You know what? I'm just realizing this is not the right list because this is lacking we'll look at the right one in a moment because this is lacking this Rolo. But you would also probably want to include this Rolo. You can pay 1 AP when played, and if you do, choose up to 1 character with an active main ability, 3,000 less BP, and 1 or less energy generation on your opponent's field, and sideline it. And that's anywhere on the field. So you can get rid of anything on the back line, on the energy line, on the front line. I think you're going to want to run 2 of these just to have in handy situations to tech against what your opponent's running. So sorry about that. That should have been on this list. I'm not sure why it's not. And then we're also going to be looking at the Shinkiro. This one's another one. If on the front line, if there is a resting character on your opponent's field, there's lots of cards that can switch cards to resting, so that's going to happen a lot. Draw a card and give this character. Your opponent cannot choose this character with abilities or characters or triggers until the end of the turn. So this is a fantastic way to punch through, and with Impact 1, a fantastic character to punch through those final attacks on life to end the game. I think that's going to be a really strong play. And you have this admittedly less effective but still decent character in the form of the CC fighter, the C2 fighter with Nullify Impact, and then all characters with 1,000 or more BP on your opponent's front line lose 500 until the end of the turn. That can be a great way to get some incremental gains against your opponent. You do have a lot of 3,000 BP characters, so minusing that 500 could put them in range of some more lethal plays. So I really like this deck. I think it's going to be a solid A tier deck, if not quite having the gas it needs at the moment to be an S tier. Let's go look at the build that I actually put together. That one had some errors on it. Let's look at the build that I put together here. This one's more complete, and you can see it does run that Rolo Lamperouche card at a 2 of. You could potentially run more. And then you also have this Locket event. And this Locket is really strong, and you can switch your Vincent or your Lelouch cards to active, so you can gain some more multi-tack that way. Let's take a look at that card in a little more detail because I think that card's going to be a really strong tech into this deck. So the Locket card, you can only use 1 Locket card per turn, so you can't get a bajillion attacks off this way. But you can choose 1 Rolo or Vincent fighter on your field and switch it to active. It gains 1,000 BP until the end of the turn. And then if Lelouch or Shinkiro is on your field, choose up to 1 of your AP cards and switch it to active. Okay, so I said that a little wrong. Sorry. It's not targeting either a Lelouch or a Rolo. You're specifically targeting Rolo, but if you do have Lelouch or Shinkiro, which you should, you can also play this card for free. So that's an insane card. I could see you running even more of these, getting more benefit out of your Rolo. So this deck is really cool. Definitely look for this. It'll be a very popular one in your rare battles that are coming up. Now moving on to my picks for the top 2. In second place, the former heavyweight champion of the Union Arena meta, and that is Purple Code Geass. This deck gets some phenomenal tools in set 2, volume 2. It doesn't get quite what it needs to be the number 1 deck in the format anymore, but it does have some really solid plays. I think my favorite new card is this 2 action cost Lelouch Lamperouche. And what I like about this card is that there were 2, if you remember, there were 2 different 2-cost Lelouches at 4 cost, energy cost in the first set that were both really good, but you had to run both of them. It was kind of awkward. Well, this guy essentially combines both of those cards into one, and then lets you get a ton of options to choose how you want to play this. You can, first of all, it cannot be blocked by characters with 4,500 or more BP. So if your opponent is trying to stop you with a Silver Fang or what's going to be very popular, the Lancelot, the 5,000 BP Lancelot Air Cavalry. You can get through that with Lelouch, no problem. And then when played, if assuming you can discard a 2 AP cost character from your hand, you can then choose up to 2 of these. You can minus an opposing character by 3,000 BP, making them very easy to take out. With other effects, you can switch Lelouch to active if you need some of that active aggro at the end of the game to close it out. And then you can choose, or you can choose up to one of your AP cards and switch it to active. Those are phenomenal choices, and the fact that you get to choose 2, assuming you can discard a 2 AP cost character from your hand. I love this card. This card's going to be insanely powerful. I do like some of the new support we get for the Gurrens. So we do get this new Gurren fighter, this 3-cost Gurren flight-enabled version that can't be blocked by 4,000 or more BP. That's going to help you sneak out some wins at the end of the game. And then when played, draw a card and discard a card. Gives you additional draw to a deck that already has some really strong draw options. And then you have this really solid 2-cost Colin Kozuki. Draw a card, reduce the AP cost. The next card with 2 AP you use from your hand this turn by 1. So you can essentially play your Lelouch for free if you combo it with this 2 energy generating Colin. Play this, discard a card, a 2 AP cost card from your hand, choose the final option here, and then one other. He's coming in, and you didn't even have to pay to play him, so that's really strong. It also is a nice workaround to one of the things that was always a bummer to me when playing Code Geass. This power of absolute obedience, being a 2 action cost card from the hand, means that you have to be really careful on how you play this, and you can't always play it most optimally. Well, if you played that Colin first, now it's just a 1 AP cost, which gives you some additional options that way. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Colin does let you draw a card when played, so you're just getting a lot more card draw to make this deck a bit faster. And then I would definitely I would recommend to be running the Gurrens at full throttle to deal with this very challenging meta that we find ourselves in. So just a solid deck. I also would recommend running 4 of these C2s. We don't get another Nullify Impact, but this still is one of the stronger Nullify Impacts in the game, because it does reward you for sacrificing her to block an impact attack by letting you draw a card. So I've always run 4 of her in my Code Geass purple deck, and I would recommend doing the same. And now moving on to what most are considering to be the definitive S tier deck of Code Geass. And we'll see if that turns out that way. I think there was a lot of hype for Code Geass Lancelot when the original set came out, and then purple ended up outperforming it. So we'll see how things go. But I do think that this deck gets a lot of gas going into Volume 2, and most people are talking about the Nunnally. And this is really a solid card, especially for this deck. You play this, and if you have 4 cards in your energy line, this character gains additional energy generation. So just from playing her, you're already stacking up your energy line, making it a lot easier to hit those high cost characters. And then you also get to draw a card and sideline a card. So you get additional draw and an insane energy gen character. So this is just going to be an instant 4 of in your deck. My favorite build for the Lancelot coming out, we'll see how it does, but I really like the hybrid version that focuses on the Lancelot play and the Knights of the Round. Having both of these in your field gives you access to some of the better effects from the Lancelot Conquista. I really like the idea of running this Lancelot Conquista as opposed to the Cornelia and her Nightmare frame. I did always, in my builds that I did with Lancelot, I always ran the Cornelia package, but I think that it's nice to not have to branch out into a different raid and just run this Lancelot for your early game aggression. And this is some really solid early game aggression, letting you boost to 5,000 BP with Impact 1 if you have 3 or more other Knights of the Round. And of course, you do have plenty of Knights of the Round characters. You have Gino. You have 1 cost Gino, 0 cost Gino. You have 0 cost Anya, that lets you draw 1 sideline 1, which is going to be great for this deck. And then you do gain a new stepper in the form of 2 cost Anya. And then you get this really crazy new Suzaku Knight of the Round. When attacking, choose up to 1 other character on your field with Knight of the Round affinity, and it gains damage 1. So you can use this to boost your Lancelot Conquista to a damage 2 impact 1 character. I think this deck is going to be the top deck coming out of Code Geass, and I like the hybrid version best currently. So where does that leave us with the overall meta? Let's take a look. Ignore the MailChimp ad, but let's take a look here at where things end up. Coming out, there's been some shifts for sure. There will be some big shifts coming up after Attack on Titan and Code Geass Volume 2 come out. But let's go through the S tier. We still have Bleach Purple, the hybrid build with Squad Zero and Ichigo heading the show. We have the Roy Mustang should still be a contender. I don't think it's going to be nearly as dominant as we've seen to date. People are going to realize how to play against this deck, and it should also have some trouble with some of the decks coming up. But it will still invariably be a big part of the meta moving forward for the rest of the year. And then we have the Blue JJK Nanami Sukuna build, which is the preferred way to build Blue JJK, accessing just a lot of power and versatility in a way that few decks can manage. And then we have the Lancelot Knights of the Round hybrid build. I think is is going to be insanely popular and successful and bring some higher energy decks back into the top of the meta, which we haven't seen because of some unfavorable matchups. Purple Toto should still do insanely well. A lot of these decks are going to still struggle against an attacker like Toto that can switch the field up to be more advantageous for them. So I think this deck is going to still be really strong. And also having that Mechamaru that can sideline a sight remains very, very relevant, especially with some of the decks coming out. Code Geass Purple, although not the dominant deck in the meta, should still benefit quite a bit from some of the cards we're getting in this set, so definitely look for Code Geass Purple being among the S tier. Yellow One Punch Man, similar kind of thing. I think the only deck that it's not going to do well against is probably some of the multi-attack strategies from Attack on Titan, but Yellow Saitama should still be a part of that S tier. And then the Blue Levi deck, I think, is going to just take the meta by storm when it comes out. It's going to be insanely popular and be a huge force for a while. And then my last pick for the top tier is that upcoming red Attack Titan deck, and that one's going to be really focused on those high-end attackers with the multiple attack and damage too. So I think it's going to be a little bit more of a mixed. It's going to be a kind of a mixed bag moving forward. You're going to have these more traditional removal decks combating it out with some of these more strategic decks that have a lot of tools like the Toto and the Code Geass Purple. And then you're going to have these just really powerful multi-attack decks. There's going to be a lot going on in the S tier. I think a couple of things that are going to happen too. You're going to see the blue SAO is going to slip quite a bit, given we have some stronger multi-attack decks coming out. We should see, let's see some of the other picks here. I think Code Geass, the Code Geass Pizza deck should get pretty popular. I'm putting that as an A tier. That might be just my own personal pick because I love that deck. Again, you see here in the blue Black Knights deck should fare very well in the A tier. And yeah, that's about it. So hopefully you enjoyed that podcast. There's really a lot of exciting things to come for Union Arena, Attack on Titan, Code Geass Volume 2. This game just gets more and more exciting. And don't forget, we do have those fall rare battles coming up in just a matter of weeks. So make sure you get your testing in with these decks. If you want to support the site, head over to those articles I shared. I'll share them in the show notes for those listening on the podcast players and in the description for YouTube. And don't forget, anytime you buy a product, buy one of these Union Arena products via the links from my articles, the TCG Player, TCG Player is a partner of mine, that does support the site. So by going on the website, you're supporting my work, which I always appreciate. Like, subscribe, and until next time, keep on battling.